Hi, guys, and welcome to a new episode of the Wonderful Conversation series. In this series, we have the chance to chat with incredible, cool people and about the ordinary beauty and miracle that life is. And the idea is that in every chat, we kind of get a glimpse as we listen and as we talk on who we really are. And that is, in my opinion, what makes life full of wonder and less scary. So let's go straight to the good part. Today I talked to Asanka, and he's a colleague of mine that I had the chance to meet through a program that we did together with our mentor Michael Neal, and immediately I sensed that it was very very interesting, very beautiful person to be around. So as soon as I thought about this series, he was one of the first people I thought about to invite. And I really invite you to listen carefully to this conversation, because at a certain point it takes a beautiful deep turn. You're gonna start sensing, I'm sure, that at a certain point we both fall into a space where life just is easier, and all the sort of problems that a minute ago seemed real kind of dissolve. And we talk about that and we see, and he shares incredible insights on what it means, how it feels to actually lead from that place where we know what to do, where emotions are not something to be feared or explained, but are just our kind of guidance system to constantly move forward in an inspired way. So I leave you to the chat. As usual, before starting, I remind you of the Campfire at the Edge of the World, which is this new program that Daniel and I with Easier just launched. And the idea is to create a virtual space for people like you and I hope, who feel like there is something more to them that is coming through already. Right? That's the point. We want to put together in the same room people who know there is more that wants to come out and understand how that can happen, and get a more solid ground to face life from, so that we can feel more confident and more at ease as we create results in the world, and overall have a more wonderful life. And there are webinars, you have access to video lessons, there's enormous value. I really invite you to at least have a look. And of course, for any question, I'm here. I'm going to put the link at the bottom. And for now, enjoy my chat with Asanka. See you next time. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Asanka, for being here, and see what's going to come up from this chat.
Cool.
And we actually, just right before I click recording, we're going somewhere. And I just, if that's okay for you, I
Totally.
just wanted to sort of do one step back for a second, and just if you could get in a minute or two, just tell me where you at, and you know what's going on, what are you involved with, anything that you feel like it's a good ground floor to build then a conversation around.
Mm. The simplest way I can put it, and it's never end up being simple, but at the moment, it's interesting you used the word wonder before. That seems to be the space I'm in right now. So in terms of like getting what I do and that stuff out of the way, I do transformative coaching / healing work part-time. And the reason I say part-time is there is such a pull within me to explore the more creative, artistic side around film and arts and digital arts. But there is a bunch of, feelings and thoughts that I haven't really dived into it, but there is a calling. So that's why I sort of say part-time kind of thing. But most of my time at the moment is actually this openness to understand life as to how it seems to be unfolding through my own experience, moment to moment. And I'm really curious about tangibly understanding that, and like, so one of the things I've been exploring recently is why are we as a species, I can't say that word properly, why are we as a race so afraid of emotions? And to me, like, that side of the coin of thought is really interesting, because that's something tangibly everybody can feels and everybody feels. And that's been taking me places like never expected. And not from like searching or digging, but just by looking. And more than often ends up throwing me into a space where there is just so much beauty in everything, whatever the emotion, whatever the thought, whatever the moment that's unfolding. And that witnessing an experience of, I guess the words that's coming up right now is all that is in everything. And I sort of go, huh. And then I fall out of it, And interestingly, there are these peoples connecting with me from different places, and they're leading me to read something or see something that sort of completes, another piece of the puzzle kind of thing. So I think the only word that's coming up is I'm in a real space of gratitude that I'm able to do this in this moment, and share that, in conversations like this, and with people I explore together with. That's longer than a minute, but that's sort of the energy of where I am.
One thing, I mean, there were a lot of beautiful things, but one thing sort of struck me what you were saying, we're talking, is the idea of, now forgive me if I think you used those words, but if it wasn't, forgive me, but it was something about experientially understanding, right?
Mm.
Because I completely, I see it. Like there is a risk when sometimes we use the word understanding, it becomes a sort of like, oh yeah, okay, so like to make a graph and like to come out with a theory or whatever. And at least how I heard it, the idea of experiential is there's something deeper. It's sort of like, is it, oh, somehow it just makes sense, but it makes sense beyond just the words I could use to describe it. I don't know if, so I was curious, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and like, if I could, like, if I would explain that a little bit more, to connect with you, it's like, sometimes when I'm in a kind of like really caught up space, and things don't make sense, and where I'm going, what I'm doing, and all that stuff, I read an article, that's kind of pointing to all this cool stuff in terms of this beautiful space you can fall into, and about thought and whatever. It doesn't do anything for me, when I'm in that space. And I might listen to a video or a talk. It just does not help, no matter where they are. And through that, what I've realized is in the moment, whatever that's happening, whenever I allow myself to align with that truth, everything blossoms, everything unfolds, everything softens, lightens, and like the whole universe get revealed in that fractal of the moment, so to speak. And so to me, I keep on, like, because of those experiences, I keep on coming back to see people where they're at. Like, basically, see myself where I'm at. Don't try to be somewhere, reach somewhere, or feel something. No, like, be with me where I am in this moment. If I really hate something, if I really like that's my truth.
That is something that I'm always curious about, right? Because, and I, because it kind of shows up so often for me, sometimes I wonder, okay, maybe that's, it's in me, but I hear two versions of what you just said, right? This idea of like, just be in the moment and like, in a way appreciate it, kind of be present to what is. And there is a way of saying that I heard, some making up with some clients, right? Because I see it's you, I understand it, that it's more about, oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to accept what it is. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, yeah, okay, it's wrong and it sucks, but I guess I'll accept it. I'll settle. Versus that it feels like that's what you're talking about. At least that's how it resonates with me, is the idea of like, no, it's not really like accepting that it sucks. It's just recognizing life in that moment, even if it's manifesting in as you said, I'm sad, I'm pissed, but like kind of go beyond that and reconnect with it, because at least to me, when that happens, I tell you this little, actually, you can build up on it if that resonates. Just last week, or even like a few nights ago, I was in the bedroom. Our kid is now in this period that we are in this house. He's sleeping in our room, and he just it woke up. He had pain. He's 5. I think they say growing pain. So I kind of, and he started like in the middle of the night, like and it was like, it was intense. Like, it was really screaming, went on for forever. And my wife woke up, and then I had to wake up, and then we went to the doctor, and I had to get in the medicine. It was a long thing, and then my wife wasn't feeling well, so I said, hey, don't worry, just you go. I stay here. I was up and I was exhausted. So there were a lot of, if you want, circumstances where I could sort of like, gee, okay, I guess it's part of having a kid, right? But what occurred to me, and I was so happy it did, because I wish I could tell you that's always the case. It's not. But in that evening, the only thought that kept coming to my mind, I shared it with my wife the day after, was like, whoa, I like, the sentence that came was like, I'm so happy I have this backstage pass. The sense was like, I can't believe I get to do this. I can't believe I have the opportunity of actually seeing how it feels to be awake and cuddle yourself. Like, it just somehow felt so cool. But it wasn't rational. It wasn't like, okay, well, I guess I have to find the beauty in this, or or I have to frame it in a different way. It just genuinely, in that moment, and it's a period that thankfully I feel very comfortable. In that moment, it's simply the same thing that another day would have occurred to me as like, oh, it was beyond that, and it was like, I did think, oh, I'm tired, but really kept coming to, whoa, how cool it is that I get to do this. I get to be here right now, and it felt awesome. And it's not the first time, but it's cool, because if you think about it, like, saying that you love the idea of being woken up in the night by your kid crying, and logically doesn't make sense, but somehow that was the sense, and it's coming more and more, I'm noticing. So I don't know if you heard something in that, if if it resonates.
Yes, totally. And I'm glad you actually shared that with me, because as I was listening to you, what I realized is where I struggle the most is when that kind of realization doesn't happen in the moment and I'm feeling crap. And what's been kind of cool is in those moments, understanding what might be happening. And sometimes, thankfully, I remember this, and then that's really helpful. And more than, well, kind of like what I've noticed so far, and I could notice something different tomorrow, who knows, is that whenever I'm really in a crappy space in a place, it's actually not even the emotion that's there that's the issue. It's my resistance to it. It is my fear of that. And what I'm noticing is it's actually the distress I feel is actually that resistance. Yeah. The stress I feel, that resistance to the emotion or whatever the feeling in that moment is. And that's what's been really cool to play and share and play with. And what I've noticed is whenever I am just being with that kind of like, need to just get rid of this, push away with, like, this is my truth. My truth at the moment is I'm freaking hate this. Like, that is my truth. Like with conditioning everything, the normal response is, no, this is a bad thing. As a good human being, you shouldn't hate and blah, blah, blah. But when I'm totally with the fact that I freaking hate this, something happens, something softens. Like there's just this perfect personal alignment to what is within me. And that settles. And for some reason, that whatever the emotion itself settles. And I just get thrown into this state of presence. I guess is the best word that's coming up, where I notice the birds singing, I notice the sound of the bubbling brook and all that stuff. And sometimes just I don't notice the resistance at all. Like I'm just so caught up and in it, I don't notice it. And in those moments, I try to technique this, it just doesn't work. And what I've noticed is in those moments, just opening up to, okay, how am I supposed to respond here? And usually it's just doing whatever comes up next to do, regardless of whether that means hating it or just feeling the emotion or just going with it. And that always seems to throw me back into the moment. So I don't think more and more I look, there is a technique or a way to do life. The more we can, or more I can be with whatever is in the moment, it's got all the freaking answers. Like it's like the whole universe presented in front of me.
I think sometimes it just sounds too simple. That's why we sort of got caught up. Like, because in a way it's like, oh yeah, okay, so it's just here. And maybe it's for conditioning, I don't know, but like it sometimes just feel like it can't possibly be that simple, right? And what struck me, like, I think that is probably, this is for me a big word of the last 4 days, is understanding, as I'm hearing it in a very different light. And I think what you're describing is the difference between a technique I apply almost for faith, for sort of magical powers. Oh yeah, when you do that, this happens. And understanding simply like, I think there are a lot of things already that me and you and everyone do or not do because it's obvious. Like, there are a lot of things we don't look for techniques just because, like, why would I need a technique to drink water? I don't know, or to shower. There are things that you're like, oh yeah, it's clear, it's apparent to me, I see it. And I'm starting to see that level of, to me, I mean, we've been on a somewhat, similar space with like at least internal exploration with the story principle or whatever. And I'm just saying it because the idea is this conversation doesn't necessarily have to be about that, and people might not have a clue of what we're talking about. But there is, to me, I had a phase when people were telling me, hey, it's just thought. And, there was a moment of trust, of sort of like, all right, oh, okay, so I have to remember it's just thought. So then I was in the moment, I was like, all right, just thought. It didn't go away. Let me try again. It's just thought. It didn't go. But what I'm saying is that if you understand it, as in like you get it, you get to a point where you're at a certain point like, oh, I'm sad. And full stop. That sometimes my colleague talks about commas and full stops. Like, but I see it at a deeper level, right? Like if you're like, that's what I heard you say. Like you can get to a place where you're like, okay, I hate this. But because you understand what that feeling is, and you understand that it's gonna move, you get it. Then you can more easily stop, in my opinion, into like, okay, I hate this, versus I hate this, and this is never gonna go away, and how do I fight it, and this is wrong with me, and I have to. There are all these other bits that show up because we're not sure about what that is. And I'm not saying that, at least not for me, I'm not sure. I'm not like, oh yeah, I got this. I don't even know if I would want, like, if you can ever like get life. I don't even know if that would be a good thing, because I think it's nice to explore. But there is something incredibly helpful in sort of like going from focus on the next step, follow your wisdom, to, of course I do that, because that's how it works. I get it. And the more you kind of go on that side, I think is less of a technique and more of a thing. And I loved when you said it, like, oh yeah, we listen to a video or read an article, it wouldn't work. Because they're not supposed to, right? But I get it complete, because I also sometimes, okay, well, I'm confused. Let me plug in an audio or some. But those are not tools to fit. But that's not, but they're tools of understanding. Now, when we are in that space, probably is not the best place for us to sort of like progress in our understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, and your reference to understanding, like, in my learnings and doing studies and all that, there was for quite a long time I was trying to get the understanding, and that in itself was counterproductive. And what I've noticed is the understanding happened when I realized whatever that we feel in the moment wasn't dangerous. And the only way I realized that was playing and exploring for myself. And when I experienced that, like, okay, I am resisting this moment right now, and it very much looks like the world's against me. And when I noticed that how much resistance I had to everything and the way I was feeling, and for whatever the reason, I imagine this resistance I had in that moment as the most lovable thing for me in the world. Like I imagined, this one being that I would do anything for, no matter what they do. And when I imagine this resistance as that, everything softened, and that softening, like that relief, kind of like created the understanding. Like I don't know, it somehow rewired my brain in that moment. And what I realized afterwards is that I was in a space of unconditional love for the state I was in, which is the resistance state I was in. And for some reason I did this, technique thing, the superimposing.
Sorry. Just continue that.
Yeah, superimposing this like loving being on, imagine this resistance as that, and then this thing happened. I'm like, oh, like, I didn't plan any of that. The only thing, if I ever did, I was curious and I was looking. And I was looking at, I'm feeling like this right now. I wonder what that's about. And I didn't go digging, asking why or where is it coming from and all that stuff. Just noticing, because I always felt something very deep with people who had a very Zen-like understanding about life. So like that was like a hook for me. I'm going, yeah, there's something going on. And I think for me, the only way I realized to understand is actually just walk my life and see moment to moment what's going on and what's that about, and how that makes sense to me, the way how it looks to me. And whenever I felt that light of softness and that complete openness to everything, oh, here's something. Until then, what everybody else is saying and sharing is just, it's really, it's words and a pointer, but until you experience for you, it's just information,
And I think that is sort of a new, another thing that's often used, a word that is always used in this conversation is sort of like getting to look in that direction, right? And that is also what I 100% agree with you. That like looking means this. Looking means actually be, showing up to life and actually experiencing yourself. That is what I think sometimes, which by the way, this is like incredibly helpful also for for my coaching, like working with clients, because of course it is clearer to me what getting them to look means, which is not, oh, well, I'm looking, I'm listening to you and I'm taking notes, like, but know that eventually, like, this can only really click when you see something in your, like when you're actually playing with this, as you said, to use your words, like when you're actually curious and exploring. And to me, for example, one thing that clicked was looking back. To me, that helped a lot. Like, it occurred to me, which is funny because it never occurred to me for a long time. It just very recently occurred to me, like, okay, hey, wait a minute. If what if what we are talking about is just true, it's something that, is simply a description of things and how life works. That was true before I heard of it, after. And so it just occurred to me, oh, let me look at things that happened in my life and see if I see something new now that I have this understanding. And somehow that process to me brought it in at a completely deeper level. Like, suddenly it's like, right, that's what happened. And it somehow, because it was an experience I lived, it was different. It was more alive. It was an insight that came with a feeling. It was an insight that came with like story, experience. And more specifically, the one I carried with me for a ton of time, this idea, I made recently a video about it, but the idea of, I'm very good at, because it's true, for some reason, it always seemed easy to me to, hey, me and you, we talk, we have an idea, and we make it happen. That part, for me, it's always been a no-brainer. Right? The idea of like, oh, we could do that. Okay, do we want to? Okay, sure, done. Whether that was like, let's open a crazy place, restaurant / culture cafe in Amsterdam, to let's start a magazine, to let's create a campaign, whatever that was, I think I feel very lucky because in that respect, I just never had a lot of noise. To me, there has never been any, like, it just didn't occur to me. So for me, it's always been follow the next step. It was like, okay, well, guess, okay, great. Where do we start? Okay, okay, make that call. Okay. And as it happens, things happen like that. But then it always arrived to a point in all these projects where I was like, oh man, I have a business now, or I have a project. Like, this is serious. I take over. suddenly like, okay, well, like I have to follow the practices or whatever. And every time, either plateau or then things stopped working. But in that moment, what occurred to me recently was like, okay, simply because I didn't understand that the what brought me to those successes was just this obviousness, this ease, this like following what happens, right?
Mm.
And not understanding that, I wouldn't respect it. I wouldn't make anything of it. So of course I was like, oh wow, that was lucky. Now we're here. Well, like I better study.
Mm.
But if I would respect, if I would genuinely get like, no, okay, of course I'm here. If it was obvious, like, yeah, of course I managed to create something because that's how it works. Because that's when you follow that, you eventually get somewhere. Maybe it's not what you exactly thought, but you will keep doing it. Like, I believe, like, if I could see that for sure. And I was telling this with my wife, and then I looked at her and said, you know what? You, in my experience, in all these years we were together, you have something. Kind of like, my ease of the first step of making things happen. I think you have it, telling my wife, in just somehow really, decision making in a way. It's just there is something that I'm learning to trust in you. That you're like, I can tell. Like if we are, do we move countries? Do we do this? I can feel before you of us. If you kind of contract, maybe it's better not.
Mm.
And if somehow you say, yeah, let's do that, it seems like a good idea. You kind of have very clean. You're clean there, but you don't understand it, right? And I said, wouldn't it be cool to get it so deep that you can genuinely rely on it? To literally say it to a point, because for her it's like, yeah, it's true. And then she came out with examples, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm there and there and there. But because it's not a variable in a way, it's not something that is always there. It's kind of like, okay, well, like, yeah, that time was lucky. Oh yeah, and that time was lucky. Or yeah, oh, I didn't. But wouldn't it be awesome if you get to a point where you sense it so deeply that you can just trust? Like and the image that came to my mind is like you're in this minefield, and you eventually you realize like you have a metal detector built in, so you can just take stuff because you know that if it doesn't beep, you're good. And if it beeps, you're going to put the foot somewhere, and that's built in. But if you don't know that, if you don't get it, you're like, oh my God, is that going to explode or not? And so that is really what I'm seeing around understanding in terms of like, because it gives you, if it becomes part of you, if it becomes part of how the world looks to you, you can rely on it.
Yeah, yeah. What came up for me is I don't know yet that I can fully trust the feeling. And when you said, when you talked about, like the obviousness, the easiness of how everything unfolded, like, yeah, I don't know fully I can trust that. I know that it works and it exists because particularly when I'm in conversation with people and they already know it, and so they carry that energy, that presence of it, and that's like the reference for me, and the words, like, they just become information, but that feeling, I know that's there and I know it can do something, but I don't fully trust it yet. um, and I think whenever I sort of dip my toes, and I think when I don't trust it, it's because I am caught up and I am just in my head and not really there. Then there are other moments where I'm just in it and I'm just being carried by, like a leaf carried by the wind, and then it all unfolds. Um, I don't know. I just wonder, like, even that seems to happen in its own time, in its own accord. Um, so all that seems to need is, when we're in a space of, like, not feeling crap and all that stuff, just being open to this this thread that seems to be running throughout everything. And when we are caught up and in it, do what you need to do in that moment, like, and for me, more than anything, somebody seeing where I am, my perspective, that pulls me out of it, and other times I might Netflix it, and I might watch some. Mind you, every time I do that, I will watch something and there will be a line. It might be the crappiest show ever, and there'll be a line that gets me out of it, So
Can I say something? Because this is interesting. It's like, because I actually was looking to me when you were saying, it's like, what if, because I look at you and honestly, just the sense, like, I was like, is it true that you don't trust that? Because to me, it seems like what you're saying, you're really like, oh, like, yeah, I have that sense. You said in many different ways that, well, like, even when I'm caught up, I realize that then I just do what occurs to me to do next, and it always works. And it's like, well, it really seems like it trusts. Like, what if it's simply that sometimes we get an idea in our head of what trusting or knowing means and how it feels, and that's a what, like, I'm not there yet. Because to me, the wisdom of I'm feeling crap and, oh, you know what, I'm gonna Netflix. Why would that be any different than, like, yes, I'm starting this business or whatever, right? And it's just, I think sometimes I recognize it because I just totally spend time in the same, space of, oh yeah, if only. I remember I did, for did you do Creating the Impossible?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah. We had the call with, there was a built-in one call with one of the super coach people.
Yeah.
Which you were one of them, I think.
At the time, yes.
At the time. But anyway, in my coaching call, I really remember that I was like, yeah, I just wish I could trust my knowing more. Literally, like, exactly these words.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was because then she really, I had a beautiful conversation. She just like, okay, well, like, what would you, like, if you would trust your knowing, what would you do tomorrow? How would tomorrow look like? What would be different? I was like, and I kind of described very much the same day. Why? Because of course I feel that these things, these obligations, I really feel that they're right. Like, I want to do them. I might not be excited about it, but I feel that this cause, these meetings, it makes sense to me. So I probably would do that. And then I'm gonna stop. And then I just, at a certain point, was like, oh, this really looks like today. And it just occurred to me, like, wow, this idea also, I would like to trust my knowing, is maybe another way of saying, like, I would like to always feel certain. Right? So always kind of have that ease. I then say, yeah, but it doesn't work like that, right? It's not the goal. The goal of this is not to always be clean. It's just to have that sense, wherever it comes from, to, like, you know what? No, I stay home, Netflix. That to me is incredibly wise. And I think that's what we really can do for ourselves and for the people we work with, is to get them to the point where when things feel crap, there is some little something in them that, for whatever reason, eventually whispers something, and they listen, and we listen because does it make sense?
It does. And what comes up for me is even the thought that I don't know how to trust it, I don't think I trust it yet. That's like an indication for me I'm not in the flow, because, like, when I go ahead and Netflix, there is no thought, there is nothing, it's just happening, kind of thing. And I think even for us to sometimes contemplate, analyze, look, whatever. It's because we are in a resistance to the moment. Like, that's what
Yeah.
comes up for me, because when there is not that, it just happens. Um, it's like a space of no thought. There's just like, you don't need to do anything. You just being like carried like you're on a magic carpet kind of thing. So it's a real cool, almost like a lighthouse marker where, oh yeah, if I'm playing and analyzing whatever, there's something here that's bubbling up. I don't want to feel like I'm resisting, kind of thing. And and then that too. So what's next? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I'm loving this conversation because I think I do. It happens, sometimes to sort of feel like, okay, how do I go back to that place? How do I go back to
Mm-hmm.
the flow? But as I was listening to it, I remember at least how I see it. Really, if I kind of, when I'm clean, I say like, can we ever be out of the flow of life? And you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, and again, it goes back to understanding, like, this is sort of what showed up for me. And I can't wait actually to play with it in my life, is that if you understand, and I'm making this up, but if we would get to a point where like, okay, like I can't possibly ever not be in the flow. I can't possibly ever not be trusting my knowing. It's just always there.
Mm.
I guess that what would happen, but not if we convince ourselves. Like if we actually experientially get to a point where like,
Mm.
then that wouldn't be something we even ever wonder about. It wouldn't be something like, oh, am I in the flow? And how? No, not enough. And like, you know what I'm saying? And I guess that in turn, somehow, if possible, would make us even more into the flow. And it's a bit of a paradox, because what I'm saying is like, maybe the way of being more in touch with that is to see that we can't be not in touch with that. And I love what you were saying about the ego and the thing, because if it's true, really, when we are saying like, oh, how do I get back there? How do I spend more time in the flow? It comes with the implication of saying, well, this is not good enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the even the question of how do I get back to that is coming up, is because I don't like what is. So and it just keeps on turning back to me, like in this moment is everything, like everything there is to know. And sometimes, this thought comes on going, it is a little crazy that you're not planning and whatever, you're just focusing on it. But then again, sometimes there are moments I do plan, because that's what's the moment is unraveling and showing and so on. But then there's other times that I'm just, there's just myriads of thoughts and feelings, and I just don't see anything at all. And in those moments, doing nothing just doesn't work for me. Like, I have to do something, and I resisted that I have to do something for a long time. But then when I started to do, which was just to see that I'm resisting and how that's cool, then that also settles, and other times it just means I Netflix or whatever kind of stuff. So it just keeps on returning to, like you're saying, like, you don't like what is, and that's what's causing everything. Like, we're such feeling based creatures, like it's a bit like, it's like if you weren't afraid to feel your emotions, you wouldn't have any problems. And and I had an experience with a friend of mine where there's a different direction they wanted to go on a project that we were doing, and we've been talking about authenticity and like feeling emotions and all that stuff. And he took a leap of faith and said, look, based on what we're talking, this is what I feel like what we do. And I'm going, and that completely rattled me, but it also opened up this beautiful direction for that we could explore, and this amazing connection that unfolded. And to me, that happened because he saw that I don't need to be afraid of what's coming up, But had he resisted what was coming up, it could have been, he could have been caught up, I could have been caught up. Like, it could have been a very toxic experience. Who knows? So, yeah, I kind of went on a tangent there, but
No.
I mean, and to me that relates to Sid Banks' words about if we weren't afraid of our experience. To me, how that translates to me is, whenever I'm not afraid of whatever emotion's coming up, then there's so much safety in that. And to me, that almost sounds like saying, trusting in that flow, trusting in that, because what is coming up is the truth. What is coming up is happening. That is life. That is me. That is the universe in this moment. And why not align with even that? And I don't align with it because I think it's saying something about me, or it's I don't know that it's safe and all that stuff. But when I do, then yeah, it literally seems to move worlds. So yeah, that's probably not literally, but yeah, feeling wise.
Yeah, I didn't think like, what if that was it? What if it was that simple in a way? It's just
yeah, I'm playing with it. Like, I'm really playing. If I wasn't afraid of my feeling, yeah, and I'm playing with, why do I resist emotions? And to me, like, I'm hearing, things like, it's because I think I don't know that the emotion is not saying anything about me. I don't know that fully yet, or parts of my thoughts don't know, whatever. Other times I think it's just too dangerous. It's going to kill me, whatever. But I know that every time I allow to feel myself, not chasing, trying to find where it comes from, whatever, it shows a world it unravels so much. But to me, why that's significant is I was present with what was happening in that moment, because in that moment, that's what was happening. And then often I get thrown into this beautiful clarity, beautiful, yeah. And sometimes even the reason why, which is crazy. Yeah, and it was interesting when you were talking about understanding. I felt this resistance to it. It's like, no, I don't want to worry about understanding, and I think that resistance itself is something that, yeah, there's something for me to see there. Yeah, I don't know what that is. And part of me is saying, yeah, it's because the truth of the moment. Like, you don't need an understanding for that. So, but if there's a resistance, that means there is something to see. Like, I think when there is something and there is no resistance, but it doesn't quite like needed for you or whatever, there is no resistance. It just is. But when there's a resistance feeling, there's like a tension. There's something for me to see. So
I always get a bit. It's as I see it, and it's for a while, like a bit of slippery slope. But for me, the idea of what did that emotion mean? Why was it there, right?
that's what comes up for you mean?
No, like that because I don't know. This is something that a thought that popped in as I was listening, and I just like, yeah, but it's not a thought I have. And when and I'm not sure actually that that's what you meant, but I heard this in other conversations.
Yeah.
you know, the idea is like, especially last year, I had a client that was, it's really about like, yeah, but you know, I want to understand the emotion, I want to learn from my emotion, I want to, but the thing is for how it looks to me, and that goes back to understanding, in my opinion. It's sort of like, because for me, understanding, a synonym would be understanding equals the way the word looks to you right now.
Mm.
That is your understanding. You
Mm.
can't fake it.
True, true.
In the way it looks to me right now is that they genuinely come and go,
Mm-hmm.
that I can see finally that they really are connected to the amount of like insecurity and questions and things I have in my head.
Mm.
I can genuinely see that the same thing, I experience it differently within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the question, and for, you know, maybe that not, I'm not sure that's your question, but you know, maybe something comes out for the conversation, is the idea of saying like, all right, so why do I feel like this about this thing or this
Mm-hmm.
person or this whatever?
Mm.
It doesn't make sense to me, because it, to me, that doesn't look fixed,
Yeah.
right? So the, you know, oh, well, I guess I feel like so resistant to this person because of what happened in my child, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that doesn't say, because I don't believe that I am, that the idea of I am resistant to this person is like a fixed thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I feel like that. And I know, I've seen it so many times that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 days, I won't.
Mm.
So maybe, you know, the idea of looking, where is the connection between my emotion and whatever is in my life, or how I interpret my life, or whatever.
Mm.
It's a risky, because I sometimes feel like maybe that is the only obstacle. The very idea that there is a learning within our emotion in a way, right? And like 2 Sundays ago, I had a horrible day,
Mm.
horrible. And I did, like, because I want to be clear, when I say understanding, to me, it's not like, oh yeah, when you're in it, as you said, when you're in it, you're in it. So I had this day, and suddenly my health, I was doing absolutely poorly, and my business was pointless, and you know,
Mm.
everything was doomed, you know, for an entire day. But understanding for me in that case didn't mean like done, I'm out of it.
Mm.
Understanding for me was, I didn't feel any urge, any need, any inclination to figure it out, to explain it, to dig more. It never
Mm.
occurred to me like, yeah, but why am I feeling like that? What is
Mm.
the thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because right now, it might change, but right now it really looks to me like, oh yeah, it's just, it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, it's raining. And I'm okay with the idea that when it rains, I suddenly see everything wet.
Yeah.
That I see everything like I'm doing, but it never, thanks to the understanding, it never occurs to me like I should act on that.
Yeah.
I don't. What happens is the more I go out forward, the less I take myself seriously in those moments.
Mm.
And most importantly, what I found out for myself is I don't ever have to go back and dissect that
Mm-hmm.
day. There is no value, in my opinion, in on Monday, once now I'm feeling better, to go back
Mm.
and say, yeah, but why did I think that? And how come? Like, it just doesn't occur to. I don't know if I express it.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you. I'm actually glad you said that because, and I've got to actually sort of rethink as to how I share what I'm seeing because every time I talk about experiencing and feeling emotions, people interpret that as figuring out and asking the why and the details, which is really interesting. Um, but that's not what I mean. And I used to do that, and it actually worked beautifully. But less and less, I'm finding I don't need to. You know how you talked about when it's raining. I don't ask why it's happening, whatever it's raining, right? Do you know the moments when you have really experienced experience the rain. Like you feel the aliveness of the rain and the presence of it, like you're completely with it. You're not asking about whether it's watering my garden or why today. Like you're not thinking, you're just completely with it in that moment. That's what I'm talking about with emotions. And it feels like it's already here, like asking where, what, who, that just revs up here. What I've noticed also is usually when our mind is revved up, our mind is actually trying to figure out a way not to feel something. How can I change whatever? How can I think
Yes,
differently?
yes.
How can I, change the circumstances of my thinking so I don't have to feel this? But the more I am less scared of the moment and what's coming up for me, it's like I'm experiencing the rain, and my body, like a copper conduit, seems to conduct the emotion. And in that moment, I'm fully in the richness of life, because like if I didn't
Yes.
have a body, I couldn't experience anything. Like even that flow we were talking about, that beautiful silky feeling, it like that's like being human. Like that's the richness of it, And I've noticed I can experience the same when I'm fully not caught up in the emotion and like wallowing in it, but like fully present with it. And in that moment, it's like I'm experiencing already. There's no questions, what, oof, none of that. Like
I
I'm
love
with
it.
it.
Like I hear this distinction between being caught up in the emotions or like because I really I agree with you and it's so common to hear that as oh, okay, great, I'm just gonna understand my emotions. But
Mm-mm.
but it's like, yeah, so what does it mean? That's being caught up, and then the other is just being with, knowing it doesn't bite, right? Knowing it's part of this, it's actually a cool part of this, you know. And when I was listening to your describing the rain, I just thought like the word that came to mind is freedom,
Mm.
because it's so true that we spend so much time trying to like look a few steps ahead, pretty much just to avoid certain feelings. Like okay, but how do I make sure that this thing is never gonna make me feel sad? Okay, no, let me. Right, that's really a lot of that how we spend our time. It's kind of like try to do what we can to make sure that down the road we're not gonna experience certain feelings. The moment you see the beauty, you learn that you can be with those feelings. Actually, pretty awesome. That's pure freedom because suddenly I don't. There is nothing I need to make sure doesn't happen because like it gives you this full freedom. I'm like, why would I avoid that? What's the problem with that? How cool is that, right?
And I think that's what it means to, whenever I'm not afraid of what I'm feeling, there are never any problems. Like in the freedom, there are no problems. I think that's what I'm, yeah, kind of like wondering and playing with. I don't know for sure yet, but that's what I'm experiencing and
Yes.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I find this a beautiful sort of word to kind of wrap up the chat. Like this sense of freedom. We started from wonder and we got to freedom, and I somehow I feel that it makes sense because the two things are probably maybe they're even the same thing. I don't know. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to ask you, and it's fine if there's no answer there, but simply because that's what I was asking myself now.
Mm.
Because sometimes I notice in the space of these conversations, right? Like, yeah, sort of grounds you, and then you're like, things occur to me,
Mm.
even very practically, right? You're sort of
Yeah.
like, oh man, yeah, it's like, oh, the rain, how cool, you're in that place. It's like I could do that, no, in that
Mm.
freedom. So I was wondering that for myself. I was wondering if is there anything practical or not, simple, trivial or not, that somehow it occurs to you. So like, yeah, man. Huh.
Um, I'll just share what I'm practically doing these days, and that's um, experience what's coming up in every moment. And it seems whenever I happen to be doing that, everything seems to fall into place. And that means doing, like, you know, like even the deepest of angers, when I'm like completely with it, present with it, no judgment, whatever, no figuring out. It's like experiencing the rain, Um, I don't take any harmful actions or anything like that, because that I'm completely in the flow of life through me in that moment. Um, Interesting, I'm about to say this, but I think I seem to be trusting that. And it's interesting, a little while ago I was saying, I don't know that I fully trust that, but I think I'm beginning to, or I seem to be, even without me knowing it. Isn't that interesting?
How cool is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is good to know, once you see it.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think I'm beginning to see all we ever have is this moment, and how I am feeling, whatever that might be. And more, whenever I'm seems to sort of, I happen to be in love with that, I'm in the complete fullness of life, whatever that state might be. And I think that's, for me, is ultimate peace and freedom.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, there are a million, I think we can go on to talk for the next 5 hours. So I'm just gonna, I think it's beautiful to sing this, because I feel we're in a beautiful place. I think a lot of cool stuff came up, at least definitely for me in the conversation. And yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting me to have a conversation like this. And this is the first I've ever done. So thank you for opening that gateway.
So
And
for me, it's
I
the
felt,
second, so we're good.
okay, and I felt a sense of trust with you doing that. So I really appreciate that space. And yeah, I felt comfortable to just go with it. So, and I saw a lot of stuff for me as well. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I think it's so simple even there, right? To see, like, what, sometimes if even just sitting down and wondering about what we see seems
Mm.
to be incredibly powerful and helpful. So it's a good
Mm.
reminder. Asanka, thank you so much. And
Thank you, Nicole.
I we stay in touch.
Mm-hmm. Will do. Bye for now.